Welcome, welcome, welcome to Narrate Your Story TV. You are in for a treat today. My name is Dr. Christy Iwujubu, and I do this show every Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's right, Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I am super excited for our guest today. That's right. If you are coming in right now, I want you to go ahead and share this. Go ahead and share this because this show, the content of this show is going to bless someone today. And that's the reason I always do this show. So, who is my guest today? My guest today is Reverend Dr. Sharon Styles Anderson, Esquire. And she's an accomplished entrepreneur, published author, attorney, ordained minister, and a renowned global thought leader in the area of civility and law. Her new book, Emotional Civility, that's right, Emotional Civility, the new standard for global success, introduces the new paradigm of emotional civility and examines the abandoned value of civil interaction. Reverend Dr. Sharon Anderson has received several awards on her outstanding achievements around the globe, and one of the top 2021 players in the field of humanity, and the 2021 World Book of Greatness in the United Kingdom. She's the co-chair of Prince George's County Faith-Based Advisory Board and the ambassador of peace with the Universal Peace Federation and World Civility Ambassador with the Organization of Poverty Alleviation Development, OPAD. Please, everybody, put your hands together. Your virtual welcome to Reverend Dr. Sharon Styles Anderson, Esquire. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christy, for having me. I'm excited about our discussion today.
Oh my God! And you and I were just talking. We just received our book, our new book, The Top Players of Humanity 2021, and I'm gonna be talking about it, the Almanac of Rising Star. I am going
Absolutely.
to be talking about it. Great, great, great book, and I'm gonna put a link as well for you guys to to get a copy. So let's dive into the conversation. Let's dive into the conversation.
Yes, let's dive.
Oh my God, you and I connected with Dr. Rivers. His
His
Royal Highness.
Excellency.
Super,
Yes,
super excited as we continue on this journey. So
absolutely.
for those of you, I've gotten the chance to know you a little bit, but our audience, our listeners, don't know who you are. Please take the time, take the moment, and tell our audience who are you.
Yes. So that's a big question, right? Who are you? And sometimes when we answer that, we answer what we do versus who we are. So when I'm asked, who am I? I'm a servant of God, is who I am. And have committed my life to serving God in so many different areas. So what I do is I am an attorney. What I do is I am a businesswoman and a business consultant, and I get financing for businesses and write grants for businesses. I'm an executive pastor at the largest church in Washington, D.C., but that's what I do. Who I am is a servant of God, and I live and breathe and exist to serve the people of God with the giftings that God has given to me.
Yes, indeed. And you do it very well. You do it very well. We're
Thank you.
going to come back to the financing later on during the conversation because I
Mhm.
want people to know what they can get from you. So we're going to
Oh,
talk about
absolutely.
it towards the end of the conversation. So, people are looking at you right now. You've accomplished so much, received so many recognitions and awards. And there may be other women that are looking at you right now, thinking to themselves, it's easy for her to get it.
Mhm.
But there's always a journey that started from the valley before you get to the mountaintop. And all the
Absolutely.
time, especially in this social media, you always hear when people are at the mountaintop, but you never taking the time to find out what it took for them to get there. So please
Mhm.
take the time, take the moment, and share
Sure.
with the audience, how was that journey in the valley for you?
Sure. Sure. So I've had so many valley experiences, not just one, that we would be here for days talking about how God brought me out of the valley, because it was only through His grace and His mercy that I've ever come out of those valley experiences. And I think that we all know, at least in my experience, there are valley experiences that we create ourselves, and there's valley experiences that are part of God's purpose for you. So if anybody's listening, a woman that's listening and might find them in a valley experience, sometimes it's because God needs to get something out of you for His purpose. And so I've experienced both. I've experienced the ones that I've placed myself in because of bad decision making, because I didn't seek the voice and the face of the Lord before I made a decision. I've experienced valley experiences because I went ahead of God before I got confirmation on something. I've experienced valley situations because out of trauma, I made certain decisions instead of, again, letting God heal me. And as a result, I then still had to rely on Him to come out, and it was Him that brought me out. But there were those that I created myself. So I want anyone that's listening to know, even if you've created your own valley experience, i.e., bad judgment on money, i.e., selected the wrong man, i.e., made some bad decisions because you didn't hear God, God will always bring you out. But then there are the valley experiences that happen and you have nothing to do with it. So we can unpack the exact incidents if you'd like, but the bottom line is, in order to get where I've gotten today and be able to write about emotional civility and really appreciate the concept of civility, it's been because I haven't really been always a civil person. I sometimes have been known to act emotionally, to be defensive. As a criminal defense attorney, which was my background, defense is in the name, right? So even in relationships, I could tend to be very defensive, and that eroded a lot of the relationships I've had. And so when I started on this civility journey, I realized that God, through His infinite wisdom and grace, actually took me through the valley of incivility in order for me to write about the benefits of emotional civility. And that's what God does, right, Dr. Christie? That's what He does. There's always promise out of your pain. And one word that God has given me recently that I'm working on is that there is trauma in transition. Whenever you're transitioning something, there is trauma, but there is treasure in that trial that God will utilize. Hallelujah, in order to help someone else. And so God doesn't waste pain. That's what I found. He does not waste pain. And so I call me whoever's on the phone, and I can take you through the pain of divorce, the pain of bankruptcy, the pain of foreclosure, the pain of low self-esteem, and tell you how, again, through the infinite wisdom and mercy and grace of God, that He has used all of those trials and all of those valley experiences to catapult me to where I am today, where I mentor women who have been divorced, where I mentor women who may have had a child that has gone through something and challenging, and you still had to stand and say, I'm a pastor, when everybody doesn't think that pastors' children should go through anything. I've mentored women who have been victims of abuse. I've mentored women who are struggling with business. That's why business financing is one of the focuses of my business, because I know what it is to be without. The Bible says I know how to bound and how to be abased, but in all things, right, I give thanks unto God. And so I've had the ups and I've had the downs and I've had the back and forths. And the way we get through those traumas is to recognize and understand that God And that God will bring you out if you trust and believe in him.
Wow. As we continue this conversation, I'm looking at you and you're saying all these things that you went through, and nobody would have imagined that. And there may be a woman who's looking at you right now
Mhm.
in that winter, going through divorce, not knowing where the food is going to come next, not knowing whether she's going to get hired for that job that she is desperately looking for, not knowing if the child is even going to go to school because there's no clothes to send the children to school. Take some
That's right.
moment at this
That's
time,
right. That's
really
right.
get it somewhere in your heart and talk to these women.
Yes. So if you're listening, I've been there, and so the struggle is real, and understanding and recognizing that someone sees you, and if you called out or texted us, we hear you, and we're here for you and here to pray with you. um, it's hard when you're in the middle of it to really believe that God has not forgotten about you. It's hard when you're in the middle of it to believe that you're alone. When your children are crying about food or clothing and you don't know what the next step is going to be, it's hard when you're in the middle of it. The only advice that I can give to you is that through prayer and supplication, God will bring you out. And oftentimes, there's that story about a guy in a boat and he wants rescue, and God sends all different ways to rescue him. A helicopter and a plane and another boat. And the person says, but God, I was waiting for you. And then God says, well, I sent like 5 ways to rescue you. You just didn't see it because you wanted it to come in the way that you wanted it to come. And so if you're in that situation, know that your help may not come the way that you think it's going to come,
Yes.
but your help will come. And so be open to different ways that God can come and change and utilize you in your situation, but also help you through people like even today through Dr. Christie having this opportunity today to minister to your spirit. All I have to give you is hope. All I have to give you is my testimony. And my testimony is that God never failed me. It might have been difficult. We went through difficult times, cried a lot of tears, lost a lot of friends. But in the end, in the 11th hour, God always, always, always came through for me.
Wow. As you were talking, and I'm thinking about situations, so many situations, but one in particular, when I first got here, excuse me, when I first got to this country, my second job, and I remember, I mean, it seems like it was only yesterday. I remember walking from my job to home, to my apartment, 1 o'clock in the morning. And guess what? I was walking, I didn't have a car. While people were afraid of policemen, I was so glad when I would see a policeman because
Mhm.
I knew that that man always looked for me every
Protection.
for
Mhm.
protection. Will slowly, slowly walk me. I mean, he will be driving and I will be walking home, make sure that I got home. You know, in this pandemic, I've gotten to talk to a lot of women who are going through a lot of stuff that we can't even begin to unpack.
Mhm.
And as I coach women, helping them unpack their story, helping them gain the confidence to stand up and speak out and
Yes.
pursue their dream. One of the things that I find out is not feeling that you are good enough,
Mhm.
feeling like you are being judged. It
Mhm.
happened, and most of it happened as a child, and you had nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
But we
Mhm.
continue to carry this baggage
Yes.
as we grow up.
Yes.
I think that internet right now is a playing field for
It is.
everybody.
Mhm.
But you can't move forward unless you uncover your greatness. You can't move forward until you uncover your uniqueness. You can't
Yes.
move forward until you become comfortable in your own skin.
That's right.
Your
That's right.
journey, you talked about so many valleys. How did you get from that being defensive? And trust me,
Mhm.
we've been there. And because it's so tempting in the heat
Sure.
of the argument,
Mhm.
it's so tempting. But
Yes.
walking through this journey of civility, we have learned to do it differently.
Hmm. Absolutely.
How can you walk me through at least where you were at that darkest moment to where you are being an attorney, being a reverend, being a doctor, being a civility ambassador?
Hmm. So the whole concept of emotional civility is about treating someone like you want to be treated. And the picture that I have, if I could give someone, is this lane, this highway. So from your getting punched in the gut about something or with something that you don't like and your response, there's this 4-lane highway. And you can choose to go straight down the path that you normally go down, which ultimately will end in collision, or you can choose to take that exit ramp, right? And that exit ramp is civility. So there's that period of time between when you get punched in the gut and your response that you can intentionally take that exit ramp. Now, what I had to learn and learn the hard way and learn over time was not everything deserved my response, that there's strength in silence, that there's strength and power in pausing before you respond, that instead of hearing, that you listen more. I wasn't a real good listener. I heard. And so I was formulating my response to someone because, I'm so smart and a lawyer and everything. I'm formulating my response to you prior to you even finishing your sentence because I'm assuming I know what you're going to say.
Mhm.
And then my response is not civil, even if it's not in an aggressive tone. The response in and of it itself might not be sensitive, might be too analytical because I'm not hearing you. I'm listening to you. And so taking time to process information, actually hearing the person that you're engaged with, deciding maybe this is not the day to speak. And I deal with that a lot in my book because that is where I think I really learned the value of emotional civility. When you're tired, you're more apt to snap or respond in anger. When you're sick, I went through a period where there was some trauma in my life with respect to one of my kids, and I was diabetic, and I had this is my second time with dealing with some financial issues. And so, where was I going to live? My son was dealing with some things, and I was diabetic and I didn't even know it. So my sugar was at 800. And when your sugar's at 800, first of all, you should be stroke dead. But secondly, that means that you've been running in the sixes or high for 3 months. One of the symptoms of that is being very short-tempered and emotional. So my body, my physicality, my physical makeup was tending to respond in an incivil manner because of my health reasons. And so I had a health reason, I had a family challenge, I had a financial challenge all at the same time. And I'm trying to balance that. And then someone says something I don't like, and I'm either misperceiving it, I'm not hearing it, or I'm responding on the fly with my natural instinct, which is to be defensive and to be argumentative, because that's kind of what I was taught because I was trained to be a defense attorney. So emotional civility, what I had to learn was if you're sick, don't engage in a difficult conversation. If you're not feeling well, take a pause and time out. Tell somebody that you'll get back to them. Don't hit send on that text. Don't sit in. Don't do that proactive email, shady comment. that you think everybody doesn't know, but they know that you're being shady towards someone because you're in an emotionally fragile place. There was a time when my husband first left, my father died right after. And as a pastor, I remember I was standing in the pulpit and I felt like I was naked. It literally felt like everybody was looking. I was standing there without any clothes on and that I was naked. And I said, God, what is all this? And he said, well, two of your coverings have been pulled off. So those things that you would normally not experience in the spirit, because your coverings are gone, you now have to fight against yourself. But I wasn't used to it because I had that covering. And so when things change in your life, and we all have to experience adjustments, you have to make that adjustment emotionally to be able to respond appropriately so that you don't do damage and have a consequence that you might not be able to live out. And that's the importance of it. You have to do the work. You have to start with the understanding of who you are and where you are. Ruth, for example, Naomi said, I lost my husband and I lost my sons. Call me Mara. I'm bitter. And my pastor's preaching on this, and it just resounded with me. But she felt bitter, right? She was emotionally and mentally strained because she had lost so much. And then because she had lost her sons and her husband, that means she lost her financial resources. And so she just said, well, call me bitter. I'm kind of done. And so she then decided to go back to the house of bread, Bethlehem, in order to get assistance from her people. And look what God did, right? Ruth said, I'm not leaving you. I'm coming with you. You've done so much for me. All the other daughters-in-laws left. And then, of course, we know the story that Ruth was introduced to Boaz, and then Naomi then found her purpose again because she was able to guide Ruth in the process of connecting with her kinsman redeemer Boaz. And then what happened to Naomi? Then she was blessed. She was covered again. She was covered by Boaz through that lineage. We know we went from Obed to Jesse, from Jesse to David, and then David to Jesus. And that's all through Naomi's choice to go through that transition. But she started with saying, I'm bitter. So in that, there's a triumph, beloved, whoever's listening, on that other side. But if you read any story in the Bible, you can get hope to know that if you just hold on to God's unchanging hand and walk through the process, that He will perfect you, He will transition you, He will humble you, He will guide you. But you have to be willing to take that first step. And just like Naomi said, hey, I'm bitter. This is how I feel right now. If we pretend like we're not suffering, so many women, so many people, they pretend like they got it all going on. One thing that I'm very transparent. I have a testimony. I have a story because I know that through each and every trial, God has given me a testimony that not only has benefited me, but has benefited someone else. And so you have to just, it all starts with being honest with yourself. God can't work through, He can, but He doesn't usually work through self-will. So if you are stuck in a situation and you are not laying on the altar and being humble and say, you know what, I'm really messed up. This one was a result of my choice. Right. This was a result of something that I did. I didn't do anything to cause my father to die. Right. That was in the normal process of life. He lived a great life. He was my best friend. He just happened to die at a bad. It was never a good time, but at a real bad time because it was right after my husband left. So, I felt so vulnerable because I felt that I didn't have that support. Even though I'm a businesswoman, I'm a professional, I lived by myself. I didn't get married until 30. So I took care of myself, had my own house before I got married. So But that relationship of 16 years wasn't a 2-year marriage, it was a 16-year marriage. When that broke, I felt so vulnerable. But and there was some things that I did to, to I won't say cause it, but to contribute to it, right? Because it's never one sided.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to be in my transition to get through to the other side. I had to be honest with Sharon about what part I played in my financial decisions. I had to be real with Sharon about changing habits in order to not repeat the same mistake. And so, as we go through life and we're dealing with being civil, often incivility, it's not just culture, it's not just people are the way they are. Sometimes we become anxious and overwhelmed and then respond in certain ways because we're carrying the burden of the trauma. And you said it originally, there's trauma that happened. There's probably someone who's listening who might have been the victim of rape, you've been a victim of child abuse, and you're saying it's not fair. There are some people that say, well, God, how could God love me if he allowed that to happen? And so you're carrying the trauma. And as a result, you find yourself losing jobs or not able to engage in healthy relationships because you're carrying that trauma. And it all starts with at least the first recognition of, I'm hurting. If this hurts, I don't like it. And I believe we don't give a God enough credit, because you can lay on your face and say, God, I'm angry at you. I don't understand why you allowed this to happen to me. And if you're that vulnerable with God, he will come in and heal your heart and allow you to get through that process and use that pain to his glory. But even in the civility spectrum, that I call it, in this emotional civility spectrum, it all starts with acknowledging that trauma happened and acknowledging where you are in the process so that you can either make better choices or that you can allow God to come in and heal you.
Wow. You said a lot of stuff in there, but I'm going to come back to it. But right now, let me say hello to our listeners, our viewers, Janice Cummins, Miss Wonderful, and my good friend, Loana Parker. Thank you all
Hello.
for watching. Thank you all for
Thank
watching.
you.
Good morning. Good morning. Go ahead and share this, because this message is for somebody. That's why I do this every Monday. This message is for
Yes.
somebody out there to get some healing, to get clarity. So go ahead and share this message. And don't forget to drop your comments, and I'll come back to you again. Thank you so much for watching and listening. You said something about you said a lot of stuff, but one of the things that you said was being okay, acknowledging where you are. And oftentimes it's very difficult for us. And you talked about civility, and I've always believed that it's okay to say I'm
Run,
wrong.
Colin.
It's okay to say that I am wrong. And acknowledging it doesn't mean you're weak. Rather, it's because you value your relationship with the other person. But I also find that sometimes people will take advantage of that. And when you are in a certain emotion, to really just don't say anything at all. Silence is the best thing. Don't say anything at all. I'm having to learn that myself and just shut it down, because if you start speaking with emotion, you may go down the wrong path, and we don't want to do that. Now, talk about, you are a defense attorney. And as you are talking, I'm thinking a defense attorney, emotional civility. How do you get it? How did you get to be there? Because both of them don't go in the same
Well,
way.
the thing is, it actually does. A defense attorney, that's the whole point. And I actually give a story about this in my book. A defense attorney doesn't mean that you have to be cross and defensive as we know it. A defense attorney is defending your rights, is speaking up for someone's rights. And so if you're being charged with a criminal offense, you have due process rights, right? You have a right against self-incrimination. You have a right to a trial by your jury. So it is intellectually and professionally presenting a case that allows you to bring those rights and those defenses against criminal prosecution to bear for either a jury or judge to make a decision. So the example that I give in my book is it's entitled in the chapter's entitled "More Bees with Honey," and I was in a homicide case, and there was a psychiatrist. I was cross-examining a psychiatrist. And so, like you said, the perception is, and even then in my early years, the perception was that you have to be cross during cross-examination, meaning you got to be a little, aggressive. And, that might work with a street snitch or a drug addict, but when you're cross-examining a professional, then if you are cross during the cross-examination, instead of just asking questions matter-of-factly and professionally, you're not going to get the information that you want. So I was doing that in my naive, early in my profession. And we took a break, and there was a judge that was really fond of me and thought I was a really good lawyer. And he called me up to the bench right during the lunch break before he left and said, call me by my last name, and my maiden name was Styles. And he said, Styles, he said, you can get more bees with honey, and stormed off the bench. And I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? And I'm thinking, and then it occurred to me that if my approach in cross-examining this psychiatrist was more professional, maybe I would get the information that I needed to be able to argue my case before the jury. And sure enough, I went in and I changed my tactic, and it was more of a dialogue on the stand than an attack. And as a result, I was able to win the case, and it changed my life, but certainly my professional life, because I realized that cross and aggressive way of lawyering was not always appropriate. There are times when you have someone that's lying on the stand, right, where you have to demonstrate to the jury, not only in the manner, not only in the words that you're using, but the manner of cross-examination, the way you're cross-examining, that someone is not telling the truth. But if it is a professional on the stand, like a psychiatrist, and you need to elicit some information, there's no reason for it. And so I use that as a life lesson now. There's in discussing and dialoguing and disagreeing, we don't have to be disagreeable when we're disagreeing. We can disagree, we can agree to disagree. And if I want you, Dr. Christie, to understand my point, you're only going to understand my point if I deliver it to you in a certain way. Right? So use this visual. If I deliver a lobster dinner to you on a dirty paper bag or a trash can top, you're not going to eat that lobster dinner. You're going to say, throw it in the trash. It could come out the oven. I take the trash can top, I put it on the trash can top, and I deliver it to you. It could be the most expensive dinner in the world, the Wagyu steak, but you're not going to eat it because I'm delivering it to you in a certain way. And all too often in this society, I was just on the radio this morning, we don't deliver information. It's like we don't care. We don't care. There's a store here that I go to get a smoothie. It's a lot of young African-American kids, and you can customize your smoothie. So I customize my smoothie, and they get irritated because I'm customizing my smoothie, and I'm going to deliver my training packet to the manager, because these young kids need to know there is no reason right, for that behavior. It is not professional. And for businesses, if anybody runs a business on here, it can be the cost and your bottom line. Here in the district, the Metropolitan Police Department has just been sued by 15 African American women police officers for sexual harassment. And if they would change their culture so that their culture was one of civility, right? As opposed to this is just the way I am, right? So for officers, just that good old boy, so I can joke the way I joke and I can make sexist comments. And in one instance, the allegation is one of the officers urinated in front of the black woman. He probably does that in front of his guys, which is not an issue, but look at your audience, right? So civility requires a look at your audience and then make sure that you're not delivering whatever you want to deliver. If it's coming out your mouth, that it must be important enough for you to deliver it, that it's not on a trash can top. It's not on a tray. It's on fine china. And if it's not working and you can't get it across from fine china with fine china, then you need to step back and think about how can I get my point across other than using a trash can top. And this is what we've been doing in our society for too long, and it's eroding our society. Here in the United States, January 6th,
Yes, yes,
insurrection.
yes,
It's
yes.
all based on not just civility, but emotional civility, right? Why would they think, as an individual, take the politics out of it, that what they are doing by smashing windows and hitting police officers, why would they think that would successfully get their point across? It didn't. It didn't, and it hurt a lot of people in the process. So, you, myself, certainly the godfather of civility, Dr. Rivers, we're looking at how can we begin to reintroduce in our culture the forgotten concept of civility. And that's what I've been, I know that this is my assignment from the Lord now.
As you are talking, a lot of things are going. I mean, we can talk and talk and talk about this because this is huge. But in situations, and I'm having to learn this and relearn what I knew to be doing. And that is that oftentimes people will know what's right. They know what's wrong, but they will be doing it to you. They'll be doing something to you to see your reaction. And as
Mm-hmm.
long as you are not defending yourself, right? You're hoping in your mind they're gonna stop, but they are not stopping because they
Mm-hmm.
want to know how far can they go
Mm-hmm.
without saying something. Or sometimes I think that some people may think you don't know what's going on. You don't know what
Mm-hmm.
they are doing. And so they
Yes.
continue to do it until you get tired. And the next thing is you lash out, right?
Right.
And we're talking about emotional civility. And I'm learning to just back up. Just
Not
don't
react.
say anything, be quiet, right? And even if I still say something, but not at that particular time, because it's gonna take me into a different place that I don't want to go, but come
Absolutely.
back later. But
That's
that
it.
takes a lot of restraint for someone to be able to do that. Because the easiest thing is to let that person have it,
Yes.
right?
That's right.
Let
That's
that
right.
person have it. So
I
as
always I always say, but let me interject because it's to this point. I always say, we say we're going to give someone a piece of our mind. I don't want somebody to have a piece of my mind. I
yes,
don't.
yes,
So it's mine to have. And so it's mine to control. So that's what anyone should think about, right? They think they're defending their honor, they're defending their thought process, they're defending their position. And it's okay to do that. But when you go cross that line to giving someone a piece of your mind, you're literally giving someone a piece of your mind. And in the end of at the end of that discourse, you're the one who's losing the more you fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. And it
and
is difficult. That's why I wrote the book, because I didn't always do it and still don't always do it well. So
I didn't think, now that you're talking, you are so right. Giving somebody, that's what we say, I'll give you a piece of my mind. But
Mhm.
you are giving that person a piece of your mind, meaning your mind is lost. You're lost. You are in this battle,
Mhm.
back and forth, back and forth. You no longer have a peace in yourself. I
That's
never
right.
really thought about it. You are absolutely right. And
That's
so
right.
let me go back. Let me
Mhm.
rewind back to
Mhm.
the way it used to be. How you got to be an attorney from where you
Mhm.
were. Can we just take a little time and talk about
Sure.
it?
So I am. I think when I grew up, I really actually wanted to be a teacher, and I ultimately have taught law school, and that's my favorite thing to do. So in my current consulting business, I have a whole training department because that's my love, is actually teaching, and actually being an attorney in a sense is being a teacher. So when you're in court, you are teaching the jury. That's the way I view it. What position you want them to have. And I think the best attorneys actually approach lawyering that way because they are teaching the decision maker, whether it's a judge or a jury, what about their case should resound with the fact finder so that they find it in favor of their client. So really lawyering for me has really been attractive, my love for teaching. But what compelled me to be a criminal defense attorney, because really I wanted to be an international attorney. I was into international relations. My major was international relations and Spanish, and I love traveling. So I just wanted to travel all over the world. But I interned I went to Georgetown University Law School and I interned with an attorney from the Public Defender Service. And on my first day, he took me to court, to arraignment court. And I saw that the courtroom was full with Black and brown people. And I saw a number of not Black and brown attorneys not representing my Black and brown brothers and sisters adequately. And it literally made me cry and sick to my stomach. And the whole concept of and understanding that there are people out there that can't afford counsel, but are entitled to the same amount and quality of representation as someone who has $5 million fell on my shoulders. The Lord placed that burden in my heart. And it is for that reason that I became an attorney and started to work in criminal defense representation for so long. And because I did it so well, I was then asked to teach at Georgetown. I then started programs at Howard University Law School around trial advocacy and criminal law and criminal defense. And then I've taught at Harvard in their trial advocacy workshop program for over 20 years to teach students about the value of that type of work and then the process to do it successfully.
Wow, you really have a vast experience. And that's what we were talking earlier, that those experiences, God never lose any experience.
Doesn't He
Any of the
doesn't.
experience, I mean, you may be going through it and it doesn't seem like you're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's
But that
right.
is really for you to help somebody in the future. That is, no
That's
matter what you have been through, that lesson that you learn from what you went through is for you to help somebody in the
absolutely.
future. And so, as
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, you are reverend, a good one too.
Amen.
And you are an attorney, a good one too.
Yes.
How, I mean, help me understand how you do the two, because I'm looking at you, Bible, 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 and I'm
Mhm.
looking at you, and we know what we think about attorneys and in criminal defense attorneys. How do you reconcile the two? Is the
Mhm.
question.
Yeah, I think people give criminal defense attorneys a bad name. I think everybody's life has value. I've represented people charged with the most heinous crimes, but that person was a person. They were somebody's child, somebody's brother, somebody's father. And I think over the course of my career, I've probably only met one person that really made me question values. I think I'm a humanity, right? We are what top players in humanity.
Yes, yes,
Humanity,
yes.
humanity says that we have to help those who need help, and those who need help are not the perfect people, right? We all make mistakes. We
Yes.
all are, 2 minutes away from something, right? A decision away from something. And what I found in representing people was that they made bad decisions because they had bad decisions made for them, which doesn't absolve them of responsibility. But our criminal justice system in the United States says you are innocent until proven guilty. I have a client who I represented as a young boy. He was charged with like 8 counts of burglary. Come to find out, his mother was a crack addict. His mother's boyfriend was a drug dealer. He was real tiny. And so they used to make him sneak through the window and steal stuff and to support their habit. And he got caught. He was a brilliant little boy. I say brilliant, he was brilliant. And while he was out in the street, while I was representing him, he got stabbed and his mother couldn't take care of him. I took him in. He was acquitted. Actually, even the judge that was hearing the case would let him come after the case was over to the chambers to see him and talk with him because he was such a bright little boy with such a great heart. And I still talk to him. He calls me every year on Mother's Day and just to say hi. And I let him live with me while he was able to heal. I tried to get him into a school that I probably shouldn't have because he was intelligent enough, his culture and his lifestyle couldn't make that shift. So ultimately he did have to go back to his family and he made some bad choices again, and I represented him again, and he just happened to be acquitted again. But he ultimately learned his lesson, and he's a father, and he's working now, and he's doing well. I represented an older gentleman, drank a little bit too much, was approached by a young drug dealer, and he killed him. And he meant to kill him. And he actually said it on the stand that he meant to kill him. But I presented it as a self-defense case because I knew that that's really what it was. And the jury acquitted him, and he's never been in the system again. So we write people off so quickly. And that's not humanity, and that is not God. So when you say, how do I reconcile being an attorney with my role as a pastor, I believe that being an attorney and a criminal defense attorney is God's work. We reach way down, song that says, God reach way down and pick me up. We are the ones who deal with those who society says should be thrown away. And I don't believe anybody should be thrown away. And like I said, when we started, you asked me, who was I? And I said, I differentiate between who I am and what I do. And for me, I'm gonna cry, as I feel the Holy Ghost, as a good criminal defense attorney, I recognize that I represented people that was different from what they did or was accused of doing. And as a result of that, I was able to give them my all. So I was pastoring, right? What would Jesus do? What did Jesus do? Half of his disciples were, tax collectors back then and murderers. And, they were criminal defendants, that did something other than what society felt was acceptable. And just because someone does something that society does not feel is acceptable to me does not mean you throw away the key. Our correctional system is horrible. And so the answer for me, yes, there are some people that need to be punished and put away. But the majority of the people are humans who deserve to have just as much of a right to live and get another chance, because we know that God is a God of another chance, like anybody else. And if just because of the color of my skin or my financial situation means that, does that mean that I don't have the resources or don't have good resources in order to fight for my humanity? No. No. What would Jesus do? That's God's work. God's work is to say, I'm going to look at you through the lens of the blood and give you my all, just as God would do. After that, it's up to God. It's up to God whether the jury decides that person goes to jail. It's up to God whether or not the jury acquits that person. That's God's decision. It's not mine. My decision is to give that person the giftings and the talents and the best that I can give them, given that God has placed me in that position, and care for that person as a child of God. And then after that, that decision about what happens to them is God's.
Wow. You said it so well because in my mind, I'm trying to reconcile. How do you reconcile the two? But you actually make a lot of sense when you say that, because the way that you are approaching it is when you really look at it, it's doing God's work.
Yes.
Like you said, it's not up to you what happens at the end. You just do what you need to do that is right, and the rest is left to God to do.
Yes, it's left to
So
God.
I want to welcome our His Royal Highness
Oh,
Kojina, King Kobina Amisa the First, Dr. Sir Clyde Rivers. Thank you for
God
joining
bless
us. And
you.
thanks for joining everybody, Sharon
Thank
and
you.
the rest of them. Thank you all. Please don't forget to put your comments. We'll come back to your comments. This has been really, really great for our listeners. And people, like I do this, please go ahead and share this, because you never know whose this message is going to impact. You never know
Yes,
whose this message is going to be a blessing to. Please go ahead and share the message. Let's
absolutely.
come to the end.
We have to take a station break since Dr. Rivers,
Yes,
His
yes, yes,
Excellency,
yes.
is
I just
here.
received mine, and we're gonna talk
Yes.
about it. I'll be
So
doing
you
a video
have
right
to, right?
after this.
Have to, have to, have to. Top.
Yes,
And so this is why this book is so important, because I'm in here, Dr. Christie's in here, but we are, and we thank God for Dr. Rivers and recognizing us. But what we do is so important, and we do look at people through the lens of humanity, it's lost today. We judge people by what they do, not by who they are. And so humanity says that we look at everyone equally. And so everyone in this book in their different fields of interest and the different things that they're doing in their lives all come back to that resounding issue of civility, which has its root in humanity. So please, please, please make sure you pick up this book, and then please, please, please make sure you pick up this
yes,
book,
yes.
because Dr. Rivers wrote the foreword. But as I said, Emotional Civility, the new standard of global success, allows you to get to what we just talked about. Which is, I can emotionally invest in another person and therefore ensure that my responses are correct, because I believe that that person deserves a civil response, right? Which is that golden rule. They deserve civility because they are a human being. And what right do I have to spew venom on someone else because I'm having a bad day, or spew venom because I'm emotionally fractured and fragile? I don't have that right. Now, I have the right to be emotionally fractured and going through trauma. That just means that I need to take that time to handle my emotions. And like you said, Dr. Christie, sometimes it's just no response. It's just don't say anything until you can collect yourself and honor who God made you to be, so that you can honor the person on the other side of the discourse.
Before we close, I just want to touch one place, and that is I work with women, helping them with confidence, helping them to stand up and stand out and speak for themselves and be comfortable in their own skin, narrating their story.
Yes.
From your own perspective, being a a lawyer, being a defense a lawyer. How has not being able to speak up for yourself affect these women and that you have seen, and what would you give them as a nugget for them to move
Sure.
forward?
That question is always so difficult for me, and it's because of this. I did. Nobody ever believes that I ever suffered from low self-esteem, and I did, and I faked it. I acted. I was, the president of student council and president of this, not all again what I did, but deep down inside, I had wonderful parents and I had a wonderful family, so it was counterintuitive almost, but I did not feel accepted. I did not feel always liked. And in fact, I wasn't sometimes, just because, in my environment, light skin, long, pretty hair was an issue, right? And so people would purposefully try to make you feel bad about yourself because, you looked a little different. Um, and what resounded with me, and this might seem real simplistic, but it is absolutely my truth, was believing what God says in the Bible. And God says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and my soul knows that right well. There is no way that you can discard the garment, the cloud of low self esteem without Jesus. And that is my truth. There was no way I would have been able to get to feeling, right? I'm not talking about doing, because I did like I was whole and I did like I was okay. But I would come home and cry after trials because I thought that I failed and I didn't do well enough. Even when I won, and I won most of my cases, and I win most of my cases, I always looked for the mistake and the misstep, and I should have done that better. And I couldn't even celebrate me in a win. Not everybody saw that. And as a result, there was times when I would need to medicate that because of that trauma that I felt, which was I wasn't good enough. And it was like cloud. It was a garment that I was wearing, and it was salvation and the love of God, and being able to accept the love of God that allowed my soul, not my head, my soul, because my head should have told me, with a great mother and a great father and a great family and a supportive environment, that I was worth it. But it took me to believe Christ and the love of Christ to rip off the garment of heaviness, to put on the garment of salvation. And I do believe that was, for me, the only thing that I was able to do that. Now, I know that there might be people that are listening that are from other religions, and in your religion, there is a God. There is something that will allow you to believe who you are, which is that you are great and that you are wonderful and that you can do all things. And that is what you have to believe. And it's intentional. I had to intentionally read positive affirmations, intentionally look for the positivity until, as I said, my soul knew it. It became natural to me. And that took work and that took time. And so if you are listening and you are feeling bad about yourself, just know, from whatever religion that you're in, you intentionally do the work, intentionally connect, so that you do the work to not only read that you're great, but that in your spirit, you feel that you're great. And at some point, beloved, trust me, they will match up together.
Thank you so much. And we are coming to the end. Again, I just want to take the time to thank all our viewers, those I can see and those that I cannot see. His Royal Highness Sir Clyde Rivers, Sharon, Miss Wonderful, thank you all so much for watching, and other people that are watching on other platforms that I cannot see. Please don't forget to leave your comments. And as we come to the close, I just want to say, don't forget to, I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put a link for our new book, The Almanac of Rising Stars. Please, Dr. Sharon and I are in this. Thank you to His Royal Highness Sir
Thank
Clive
you.
Rivers. And
Absolutely.
for everyone else, we do this show every Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And next week, y'all, you got to tune in because I have a special guest coming to us all the way from East Africa. So you have to come in and watch. Until next time, everybody, I just want to say thank you again, and don't forget to share. Dr.
Thank you.
Reverend Sharon Styles,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
so much. Until
God
next
bless
time,
you.
everybody. Bye bye for
Bye
now.
bye. Thank you, Dr. Christie.
Thank you.